D&D 5th edition. DM put a wild magic in-game D20 that when rolled would give you a random effect. Effects included insta-killing your player character, leveling up or down your character, giving or taking 20,000 gold pieces, and spawning artifact level magic items. These are just what I remember, but it was generally stuff like that. Once we saw the completely broken effects, we stayed away from it. DM tried getting us to roll by having a little goblin girl talk about how much it helps the town she was in. We ignore her. DM says we're metagaming and that it's just because bad things are possible. We agree, but tell him we're not going to roll it anyway because it'll make a massive power gap between our characters. DM responds by deleting the campaign. Wow, the players here have the maturity to see the dangers of a wildly powerful magical item and the problems that it can pose in their campaign, whereas the DM sees this as reason to rage quit the entire campaign. Simply elegant. So my first time playing Dungeons & Dragons, a friend at work asked me if I wanted to play and my response was, "What's D&D?" He explained the concept and had me come over on Saturday to roll a character for a Sunday game that he would DM. On Saturday, I show up and end up rolling a monk. He also loaned me a 3.5 player's handbook so I could familiarize myself with how the game works that night and be ready for the game the next day. I show up for the game on Sunday and am treated like I'm a crappy veteran player. I get heavy sighs and insults for not having actions ready on my turn and not understanding how combat works, and was told that it was unacceptable that I had to borrow dice instead of bringing my own. I explained that this was my first time ever playing, and the response I got was that I had been given the player's handbook the night before, so I should know what I'm doing if I had bothered to read it. Also, I couldn't ask anything out of character at all. There was no system for out-of-character conversation. Keeping in mind that I had only learned about the existence of D&D like 3 days prior to this, so asking a question like, "What is a bugbear?" or "Which dice do I roll for persuasion?" I would get in-character responses to those questions. "You're a monk and you don't know what a bugbear is? What kind of monastery did you train at? Why would you play with dice right now when we're trying to talk to the king?" I also had my player agency taken from me at every turn since I did not know what I was doing. 2 specific examples. First one, we open a chest with armor and weapons in it, and we are all told that we each take something from the chest. DM goes around the table asking each player what they want. "Oh, you want a 2-handed sword? Okay, here's a +1 greatsword. Oh, and here is your +1 studded leather armor," etc. He gets to me, the monk, who is wearing no armor and gets bonuses for not using weapons, and I tell him that, nah, I'm good. He makes me take a weapon anyway despite my protest that I would never use it. Mine was a homebrew Tekio Kagi, and as a monk, I still had to take the penalties for using a weapon, so still doing less damage than empty-handed. After he gets all the way around the table, he says that the weapons and armor are all cursed, and they are now our most prized possessions. We would rather die than part with our new item, and we will suffer damage any time we have the chance to use the item and don't. Second time was that we ran into a something. I don't remember what she was and couldn't ask what she was anyway. I just remember that she was evil, very powerful, and apparently so hot that all we wanted to do was what she told us to do because of how hot and powerful she was. Anyway, when she first walked up, she asked a question and I answered it. She ran up and smacked me because I dared to talk to her without her specifically addressing me. So I'm like, okay, screw it. I pull out my Tekio Kagi and strap it onto my hand. The DM looked at me and says, "No you don't, she can kill you in 1 turn. Just sit there and shut up and let me tell you when you can do something." At the end of session 1, we have just enough experience to level up. We level up our characters and we leave. I see him at work the next week and tell him that I don't think D&D is for me. His response was that everyone thought I did great for my first time playing, and they were all excited for me to come back and play again next week. I respond with a surprised Pikachu face, and like most stories on this sub, I go back even though I probably shouldn't have. At some point that week, the DM does something stupid at work. It's a very minor thing, I don't even remember what it was, but it was enough that myself and a couple of other guys joked with him about it. Again, it was nothing, and getting joked about for minor things like this was normal among us at work, him included, so it wasn't like he was being singled out. It was just a normal workplace banter that he also takes part in when others mess up. I show up for the game on Sunday. We sit down and he asks me for my character sheet. I hand it over. He looks for about 30 seconds and says, take your dex down from 18 to a 16, taking your +4 to a +3 to attack. Also subtract 500 experience, making you level 1 again. He hands me my character sheet back and watches me make the changes, also walking me through taking my character back down to level 1 and subtracting hit points and the like. After I finish, he looks at me in the eye and says, maybe they'll teach you not to run your mouth at work. He was watching me for a reaction, so I just shrugged and said, okay. I could tell he was pissed that I didn't get upset about him screwing with my character. I didn't care because it didn't feel like my character at this point. It felt more like I was playing an NPC for the guy. My 2 examples of losing player agency above. The first example happened in the first session, and the second example happened in the second session. Shortly after, just sit there and shut up and I'll tell you what you can do when you can do something. We took a break. I went out to my car and left. Monday, he told me it was messed up that I just left like that, and me not being there screwed up his encounter, so I was kicked from the group. I responded by joking about his work screw-up the week prior. I made copies of my monk character sheet, and anytime he tried to joke about my work screw-ups after that, I would give him a copy of the character sheet and ask him which stats to reduce. This actually got the attention of another coworker, who ended up playing D&D with me, after a lot convincing, and actually, I enjoyed the game. Loving the passive-aggressive revenge on the OP's part, absolutely something to envy, but even better that revenge led to a resolution to the problem in the form of a new DM. Really happy for the guy. I do not understand anybody who treats new players like this. I think the goal of Dungeons & Dragons is to make sure that everyone's having a good time telling a story together. If you treat new players like some crappy pit boss, guess what? They're not going to stick around for long. With new players, you need to be patient, and you need to be helpful above all things. D&D can be overwhelming, and helping a new player to figure out the game and watching them slowly start to get it, so to speak, I mean, to me, it's one of the most rewarding things out there. I'm just glad that the OP found a proper introduction to a great game. Last week, I decided to try my hand at DMing for the first time, and it didn't go great. It wasn't the worst horror story in the world, but on the other side of that coin, it also wasn't the best game. I was DMing for people who had been playing for a while, and felt like I couldn't give them anything new or interesting. The material I had on hand just didn't engage us. If only I had Siren's magnificent walking marketplace from Unlimited Realms. Today's video is sponsored by Unlimited Realms and their brand new Kickstarter, Siren's Magnificent Walking Marketplace. This incredible module brings its namesake to your D&D game and is designed to fit in almost any D&D setting, bringing an interesting and immersive shopping experience. From rolling tables and trading ideas to over 200 new original magical items, this hardcover module has plenty of content for you. On top of that, we've got plenty of new character creation options, subclasses, backgrounds, races. My particular favorite is the Black Market Dealer. As a sucker for all things Machiavellian, playing a black market schemer is something that I absolutely love. On top of all that, they even have recipes, songs, stories, and art that bring the campaign setting into the real world, including art by legendary cartographer Devin Rue. If you're interested, head down into the description down below where you can get the amazing content of Unlimited Realms. Thank you so much to them for sponsoring today's video. As always, supporting our sponsors does support us. And without further ado, I'm going to turn back into an animated rat so that we can get back to the video. Almost a year ago, I finally worked up the courage to leave multiple campaigns run by a friend named Rose. We had met through a 5e-based Discord server around 3 or 4 years ago. During our time together, we probably played in at least a dozen games, most of which ended prematurely. She decided to run her own homebrew campaign, which turned into multiple campaigns, along with a collection of players we'd met over the years. Despite being online D&D friends, I'd have considered ourselves a fairly tight-knit group. We'd often play other online games together. We supported each other's arts or streams or small businesses. Some players had even met in real life, and for the couple of years we played together under Rose, things weren't perfect, but they were nice, and players enjoyed themselves. She was a new DM still finding her footing, and she'd constantly ask for feedback and what she could do to improve, etc. Over the years, we had multiple conversations about her DMP PCs, concerns with some of her homebrew, the frequency of random encounters, how constant PC death had made it difficult for the party to form rapport, etc. For example, once as level 3 characters, we had just tried to retreat from a horrible bandit ambush, rolled as a random encounter. We'd probably been close to fighting 20 bandits randomly determined and lost multiple player characters. Our group barely got away, and once we were sure we were safe, we decided to take a rest. Rose had us roll for another random encounter and surprised us with another 20 or so bandits who ended up murdering another player character and taking all of our money. As a group, we talked with her about how punishing these encounters felt, especially since we had no way of influencing our outcome positively or negatively. More often than not, it felt like an excuse to surround us with monsters. She said she'd consider our concerns, we hugged it out, but surprisingly, things never changed. It took years for me to realize things had actually gotten worse, and that Rose's focus had shifted from telling an epic story to pushing players to their limits. She wanted to run a dark and gritty, incredibly deadly campaign that kept the players feeling powerless at least 70% of the time. She spent hours bragging about her homebrew creations, their special abilities that countered specific players, how she had buffed creatures because we were getting too strong, and that she didn't want us getting cocky. Deadly and dark is a valid way to play, but it wasn't how I wanted to play. I stuck around because we were friends, I supported her, and I was worried that telling Rose I didn't enjoy her games would destroy our friend group dynamic. In the end, I worked up the nerve. I was in 3 weekly games she ran. I gave her a heads up and let her know that at the end of the arcs in each, I would be leaving to give her time to write off my characters. I let her know because I supported how she ran her games and didn't want to force her to change her style because it just wasn't fun to me. She panicked. She said she'd change and that my leaving would screw up her plotlines massively, but I had made my decision and given my tabletop equivalent of 2 weeks' notice. That seemed more than fair. She eventually calmed down, or so I thought, and said that everything would be fine. That's when the real horror begins. She started to harass me in other games we were in together as players. She'd abandoned my characters mid-combat, refused to heal me, stopped talking to me even if my character asked hers a direct question. Sometimes she'd just talk over me if I wasn't there. She started to tell other players that I was a big old crybaby who wanted to play nursery school D&D and that I was better off just finding a new hobby. In her own games, she'd focus down on my characters during encounters to the point where other players had to become bodyguards. When other friends started to come forward and express their concerns with the balance in her encounters, she spread rumors that I was sleeping with them, trying to turn them against her. I'm jealous. Not even I can create fiction of this absurdity. Needless to say, I didn't wait until the end of the arcs in her games. I just left, and several people ended up leaving with me. We stopped talking, but she continued to force rifts in our friend group, demanding that people choose sides. Most didn't, but some did, and after a few months, things started to return to a semblance of normal with a looming aura of general hatred and distrust. As I mentioned at the beginning of the post, it's been about a year since our falling out. We haven't talked in or out of character because yes, we do play some games together, but our DM keeps a close eye out to make sure that any drama stays away from the table. Some folks who still play in her games have told me that over the past year, she's done some nasty things to my player characters. She's enslaved them, murdered their families, turned them into monsters. In one case, apparently my lawful good bard, who was raising funds for his orphanage, has become the BBEG and is constantly trying to molest and or murder the current party. At the end of the day, it's just a game, and I know it's all fiction, but it still feels like I abandoned my characters to suffer at the hands of a monster. Ay. This poor player did everything right. They weren't enjoying the game, and so they decided to leave, and they left for, in my opinion, a pretty good reason. They simply were not enjoying the crazy difficulty of this DM's campaign, so they left. And so the DM decided to harass this guy all throughout their entire D&D career, because yes, that is the mature way to take a player deciding to kindly walk away. Spreading rumors about the OP sleeping with other friends to turn them against the DM, that's insane. And that would make me drop this person as a friend entirely. That kind of thing is absolutely not okay. It is crazy to me. If you're spreading false rumors about a player because they left your D&D game, it should come to mind that maybe the issue isn't with the player. A little background, I've been running a hell-based homebrew game online for about 3 weeks. I had players that were not the greatest, but then again, it is online D&D. They all seemed interested at varying levels, some intrigued and active with the game, others just mildly interested in interacting with some of the game. Also, I'm doing this on mobile, so sorry about the formatting. Their names have been changed because of blah 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 blah. There's Parker, David, Jesse, and Kyle. Kyle is the problem player. He never really engaged with the story, always criticized other players' actions and talked about how great his character was. It would put Matt Mercer's group to shame. So one day, I decided to do a bit of a lazy day. Not a story-driven session, just players having fun. Then at the end, I'd end it with a giant plot twist that would really start to lead into more story next session. As far as I can see, everyone likes the idea of a lazy day. We're all teens but work various part-time jobs, so this would be a chill, low-effort session. Fun fact, Kyle did not like that. So we end our session there, and as I thank everyone for playing and prepare to describe the giant worm coming out from the ground to destroy the town, Kyle speaks up.
What the hell, man? That's it?
Maybe, as you—
No. Don't change the subject. That session was pathetic. Why are you so tired today anyway? All you do is make D&D stories. That's why you have no friends. Being a DM isn't even that hard, so shut up and just let's keep playing.
The entire table is silent. I'm hurt, but more so confused on why he got very pissy like that for no reason, including things that are not even related to the original argument. Turns out he'd had one of his dogs die and was looking for a way to distract himself. After this, he got upset, but we didn't know that yet. Yeah, that honestly really sucks. I mean, I totally understand why— Oh, wait. Okay, final edit. Just found out that Kyle was lying about his dog dying. That's fun. Anyway, Kyle said to the rest of the call,
You know what? I want to be the DM. I bet I could do it so much better than this long string of profanity and insults ever could. Come on, guys, let's do a vote. It's me or Adam.
He didn't win. After leaving my group, he invited one of my players, Parker, to his group anyway. This is recent, but since the story is secondhand, there might be details misconstructed. So, Kyle invites 8 people, including Parker, to join his first session as a DM. 7 people arrive, and we're all excited about the new campaign. Kyle, however, actually has no experience DMing at all, and spends about half an hour sitting in silence, staring at the DM's guide. After that, he asks if anyone has characters made. They thought this was a session 0, not an actual play session, so only one person even had a character ready. After about 20 minutes, Kyle is getting annoyed at everyone asking him questions about their characters. He just tells them to look it up, or I don't know, guess. Finally, the game actually comes around, and Kyle begins the story.
You're all in the tavern. What do you do?
That's it. The players are confused. The forever DMs playing are giggling to themselves, while Kyle is waiting for someone to do something. One forever DM asks if he can make a perception check. Kyle looks through the book and finally pulls out his phone to look up the word. He says,
I guess, what are you trying to look at?
The DM responds with, I don't know, anything? After another 10 minutes of confusion, the group slowly starts to disband. From 7 to 6 to 4 and finally down to 2 people, Parker and the aforementioned forever DM. The DM then offers to help Kyle understand the game a bit better, politely, not accusing or rude or anything, and this is the turning point.
Nah, you're the DM now.
And Kyle just leaves. On the bright side, one-on-one D&D can be fun and really rewarding, so I hope that Forever DM and Parker have a good time. On the not-so-bright side, Kyle is absolutely ridiculous. If you make promises like, I'm gonna put Matt Mercer to shame, yeah, you better at least be decent at your job. Being a braggadocious fool, not just in D&D, but in any medium, is not gonna make people like you. Being a braggadocious fool who doesn't know how to do anything isn't just gonna make people dislike you, it'll make them hate you. There is nothing wrong with criticizing your DM. A lot of DMs ask for constructive criticism, but it has to be constructive. Putting down your DM, who probably put hours and hours of effort into this game, is putting themselves in the hot seat to make sure that their players are having a good time, putting them down like that without provocation, not a good move. Not a good move at all. The delicious irony of Kyle failing to take that same hot seat is just a wonder to behold. Hey everyone, I decided to share one last RPG horror story from my LGS with you. For those of you who don't read my other stories, I used to DM at a local gaming store whose owner was and still is a really good friend of mine. I met a bunch of really great friends there, but also some really toxic people, from Karens to toxic douchebags. The characters from this story, name change of course, Jimmy, that guy, Tina, his girlfriend, and yours truly. This story can be divided into two parts, in-game and out-of-game. Also, trigger warning for Part 1. In-game. Beware slight spoilers for Baldur's Gate Descent into Avernus. It all started in 2019. I was running a Cursor Strahd at the local game store. A guy named Jimmy showed up at the store and wanted to play in the campaign. Since this was an open table, I told him that if he could write up a level 7 character, he was good to go, which he did. It might have been the most power gamed Hexblade I have ever seen in my life. He actually managed to crit the boss of the dungeon to death. In October, I decided to run Descent into Avernus, since it was a new campaign and the store owner wanted me to do a promotion. Jimmy also took part in that campaign. He decided to play a lawful good, important later, knowledge cleric, the human variant with the lucky feat. At a later part of the campaign, he also took the luck stone for himself. After a few sessions, we arrived in the 9 Hells. The group ran into an imp trying to scam a halfling for his soul. Jimmy takes the stage. He attacked the imp and threatened him with death, since that is permanent in the 9 Hells, so he forced the imp to serve him, which he did, only if he signed away his soul. I took note of that for later. After that, they went into a cathedral. Right in the middle of the cathedral is a glowing greatsword that is lying in a sarcophagus with a very obvious religious meaning for the inhabitants. His character straight up stole it, without even batting an eye. Lawful good, remember? The sword was important for the plot later, but at that point his character didn't know that. His justification? His character is fascinated by everything divine, so he just wanted to save the sword from devils. I kept this in my head for later because to me it seemed like he wanted to get a magic item before anyone else in the group could. So at this point, our lawful good cleric had already bullied a lesser devil into serving him and committed grave robbery. After a few more sessions, it became very obvious that Jimmy had main character syndrome. He was a stage hog, not helped by the fact that all the other players in the group were D&D newbies and a bit shy. He was also starting to tell the players, especially the wizard, how to play their characters so his character would be more powerful. So he basically saw the group as his support and nothing more. A few sessions later, the group met a pit fiend. Jimmy instantly went into bartering mode. He wanted Belle to give him the knowledge of a spell not on the cleric list. He tried to get said spell by persuading the pit fiend to give it to him without signing a soul contract. I told him he could try, but it wouldn't work anyway. He rolled a 27 and got pissed at me for trying to deny him this one spell. I told him he wanted the spell so bad he could multiclass. He also didn't want that. I also told him that he already had a soul contract with the imp, which he firmly and aggressively denied. No, he had not signed a soul contract. The imp is serving him because he bullied him into it. Well, yeah, he actually said that. Anywho, Jim got pissed because his persuasion check wasn't mind control. At the end of the campaign, he wanted the powerful artifact the players can get for himself, not even asking if any of the other players wanted it. He started to really annoy me in-game, but I still kept him around since out-of-game he was very nice. Part 2. Out-of-game trouble! During the time we played the campaign, I also met Jimmy's girlfriend, Tina. She told me Jimmy is always insanely competitive no matter what, be it board games, pen and paper, or friggin' foosball table soccer. The way she said it, I think she found it endearing, but who am I to judge? A few weeks after that meeting with Tina, the pandemic starts. Jimmy loses his job and starts drinking more than usual. He also stops looking for a new job. At that point, his day only consisted of drinking beer, smoking weed, and obsessively reading anything 5th edition related. We continue playing the store campaign online. The weirdest part during this, Tina would sometimes call me, just to complain about her love life. Mind you, at this point, I had only met this person twice. Since I thought Jimmy was a friend, I thought myself being supportive is okay. Big mistake. After finishing Descent into Avernus, I wanted to start Dragon Heist. 10 minutes before the campaign, Tina calls me. She is very drunk and sobbing. She tells me she and Jimmy have broken up, but I get that feeling from her tone that something is off. 3 sessions into the next campaign, Jimmy and I still hung out around Discord just to chat, but Tina came into his room and started yelling. I could hear all of it. The most dramatic thing I heard was Tina yelling, "I'm going to call OP and tell him that you are a psycho." During this time, I get sent voicemails. Again, more love life problems, and one where she basically says her boyfriend is cheating on her with D&D. She is dead serious. I wish I was making this up. A few weeks later, she calls me after a period of radio silence. I told her that I am really worried about Jimmy. I thought that he was living a very unhealthy lifestyle, mentally and physically. I also told her that his playstyle actually makes me and the group have less fun playing, and yes, I have communicated the D&D stuff to him as well, but he refused to hear any of it, saying that it is just the way he is. This entire situation got me so pissed off that I decided to quit the Dragon Heist campaign after 5 sessions. I also had enough D&D in general and almost just quit. Fast forward to August 2020, Jimmy calls me to tell me that he had a big fight with Tina. She told him all the stuff I told her in confidence, but she twisted it around to make me seem way more crappy. Basically, he said, "Tina said that you called me a pedantic drunkard, and that is the reason I'm not playing D&D with you anymore." I told him exactly what I told her, that I'm worried, and he said I shouldn't worry. The next day, I actually realized how crappy the entire situation was. They dragged me into their toxic relationship, treated me like a dear Abby, and pulled me right into the middle of their fights. So I decided to cut them out, block them, and start an entirely new group. We have been playing for almost 2 years now. The one good thing that came of this, Jimmy taught me the importance of saying no. This is definitely a real-life horror story. Main character syndrome, all the D&D stuff we've seen before, and there are solutions to all of those problems. However, the real-life stuff, that is a lot more complicated. Now, I hope that none of you guys encounter this kind of thing in D&D, and I think that most of you will never see it get this bad. However, there is definitely a non-0% chance that this could happen in your games. Sometimes people don't really see the boundaries of what you are willing to accept and take in conversation, and that means they will lay some pretty heavy stuff on you. My general rule of thumb, I am not a therapist. I cannot provide the help that people need. I have no idea what is going on in someone's household. I have no idea if they're even telling me the truth. If someone I just met is laying these kind of problems onto me, that is something that very much concerns me for multiple reasons. And it's why every time that happens, I recommend they talk to someone way more qualified than myself. I'm smart enough to know that I'm not the best help for most people in most situations. I know that's more serious than what we usually talk about in these commentary bits, but hey, in some stories, it bears saying. And that is going to be it for today's episode of RPG Horror Stories. It is very strange that in today's episode, every DM is acting like the worst form of corporate boss. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it, and if you did, then please do leave a like. If you want to see more of my content, then you can check out our Q&Play series, where I answer your questions in a rambly, unscripted format while playing some video games. You can check it out in the cards, and while you're there, subscribe to Crispy's Tavern to get more of our content right as it comes out. And finally, if you want to leave your own stories or thoughts, go down into the comments down below. If you can't think of a comment, then leave the comment "to shame" to let me know you made it to the end of the video. In essence, like, comment, subscribe. I will see you all next time. Farewell.